Wow, what a fantastic Formula One race in Hungary. This is Jon Massengale, joined by Bob Varsha, and Jonathan Green is not with us today, but Chris Medland will be with us shortly. But we just watched Oscar Piastri win his very first Formula One race, and thanks to team orders, he was able to hold on to that. But wow, what an amazing race, and what a crazy team order situation we just witnessed, Bob. That was really kind of crazy to watch.
It was, and I was personally very disappointed to hear all that play out. And I kind of flinched. Every time someone like yourself says, Oscar Piastri just claimed his first Formula One victory. Well, yes and no. Yeah, he drove hard, drove well, but he didn't claim the victory. It was given to him. It was handed to him. Maybe in much the same way that George Russell was handed the Austria victory when Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, took each other out of position. It's really sorry, and obviously McLaren has a lot of questions to answer. What was the background for that decision that Norris absolutely had to give back the position to Oscar Piastri? Yeah, I understand that there may have been some internal agreement in pre-race meetings and whatnot that if one driver is leading the other at a certain point in the race, that he'll be allowed to win. But I don't get that, and I'm not in favor of it, unless the team otherwise felt that that Oscar was owed something because of something that happened in another race at another time, and we're not aware of it. But that leaves a big, bad, sour taste in my mouth.
Well, Bob, wouldn't you agree that there's an argument to be made that they were giving it back to Oscar because they took it away from Oscar by making him stay out that extra lap, which gave Lando the position after that pit stop? Because had they had Oscar pit on his first opportunity, it looked like he would have come out ahead of Lando Norris.
Well, yeah, that wasn't their goal to switch positions on the pit stops, so far as I could tell. I just don't get along with this idea that we're competitive as hell and this is the most competitive racing you're going to find, and then they manipulate it like this. I mean, you are out there racing, and if you have a problem with the pit strategy, voice it and we'll deal with it one way or the other. No, I don't buy that argument that he was owed that because he happened to pit one lap later than he should have. That's what Lando did in Montreal and cost him the Canadian. I don't know. DC was upset about it, and I am too.
Well, yeah, David Coulthard was he was reliving a nightmare himself. So, yeah, he was not happy about all of that. But I'll tell you what, the awkwardness overall from McLaren was just palpable, right? I mean, it was just very, very strange listening to all of these radio messages, everything.
Yeah, and it was very one-sided, too. All we kept hearing was Norris and his engineer talking to each other. We didn't hear, did Piastri voice a concern or an objection to what they were doing? We didn't have his side of the garage to listen to about what they thought of the situation. I think that was badly handled by the people who choose these radio transmissions to replay.
Yeah, well, it was very strange. Obviously, we heard Lando. We heard the team ready to go to Lando. Lando, can we get a radio check? In other words, he wasn't responding to them initially, saying, is your radio working? Hello. And then, I mean, I just wrote down messy, awkward. It's like we talked about this not long ago, how it's like McLaren's kind of having to learn how to operate as a team at the front right now. So, but I'll tell you what, it was funny after the race, the podium interviews from both Lando and Piastri. everybody seemed harmonious and happy and excited. Nobody even talking about it. It was like different people from what we heard on team radio.
Well, that's the thing. And I didn't hear who was asking the questions, but that was a terrible interview, both Piastri and Norris, because he didn't ask the direct question. The whole world heard you arguing with your engineer about whether or not you were going to let your teammate pass. What do you have to say about that? But no, It's like, oh, you guys are good everywhere, and things must be feeling pretty good right now about your future, and yada yada yada. I don't know. I mean, David Coulthard went so far as to say the relationship between Lando and his engineer is deteriorating and could be destroyed by this kind of. You got to wonder if Zach Brown were there, and he was not. Would he have stepped in? Would he have overruled? Did Andrea Stella weigh in on the whole thing? It's just so much we don't know about it. So I guess that really is all there is to say.
Well, it was just fascinating to listen to all of this, because another one I want to quote this one. It was the team orders, or team radio, excuse me, before team orders had actually been given, because they finally gave them. But before that, it said, the team said to Lando, they said, just remember every Sunday morning meeting we have. In other words, we've talked about this. You need to let Piastri by. And I really cannot wait for, I hope Chris can get, I hope Chris joins us shortly, and I hope he can get anybody from the McLaren team to talk about all this, because this was just fascinating. And then later on, before they finally said, please do it now. I mean, and I tweeted that in all caps, because that's the tone that came across at that point. Let's do it now. And by do it now, they mean, let him pass. But it was just so awkward. And he said, the team orders came across, said, remember, this is not all about you. You need your team, and you need Oscar. That was just, it was tons of audio that we'll have to try to grab for next week or something. It was crazy.
Yeah, exactly. But in all seriousness, were they threatening their driver that if you don't do this, your position in this team is in jeopardy? I find that astonishing and frankly hard to believe. But that and that whole business of the your tires. We're worried about your tires. 4 and turn 11 and all that kind of thing. Back at the height of his Vettel wanted to sweep everything. He wanted the Grand Slam. He wanted to start from pole, lead every lap, set the fast lap, win the race. And I remember being in the studio at Speed or Fox or whatever we were at the time, and I mentioned to Steve Matchett, I said, Christian Horner is telling Sebastian, slow down. We're worried about your tires. Your race is in good shape, but we're worried you're not going to make it to the finish. And I happened to say, do you think they're telling him that for some reason other than his tires? And Steve rose to the defense of his former colleagues and said, no, they would never do that. They would never do that. They would never do that. Of course, after the race, Christian Horner said that's exactly what they were doing, was warning him that his tires were going to blow if he didn't slow down. So I think that's what McLaren was doing here. They were trying to get Lando to slow down and make the pass much more believable. But as for it being a more awkward situation if it got to the end of the race before the pass, they certainly didn't want one of those Ferrari, Rubens Barrichello and Michael Schumacher things like we saw at Indianapolis and we saw in Austria, where they wait to the very end of the race and then let Schumacher by, because his contract said that's what they were going to do. I have no problem with team orders. I understand why they exist. It's important to get maximum points for both cars. Boy, but as soon as you start messing around with, who has what position when, the race wasn't over during that round of pit stops when Norris took the lead from Piastri. I mean, it's, I don't know. It just, as I said, leaves a sour taste in my mouth. All credit to Piastri. He drove a great race. Lando drove a great race. I just hope it doesn't hurt McLaren and their efforts in the long run.
let's not forget the reason that Piastri won this race is because he won the start of the race. He had a better reaction time. He had a much quicker start. I saw the stats. He had a better 0 to 200 kilometers. So he earned the right to be there, and he earned the right to win this race. All right, well, let's take a quick break, guys. And when we come back, we'll get Chris Medland to join us, and we'll continue to break down the Formula One Hungarian Grand Prix right after this. All right. Hey, Bobby, make sure you're watching the chat because I was messaging you there. But also, I think we need to try to turn off your video because your audio was dropping out pretty bad there. So let's we'll just use the screenshot that Casey has and try it because your audio was not all the time, but it was occasionally dropping out.
And I've just jumped on.
All right, there we go. We got Chris. How's it going, Chris?
It's good. Do you want me to stay in one place? Because I've got a great view right now, but I can't go and interview anyone. I'm on the roof near Parc Ferme.
Oh, wow. Yeah, why don't you hang out there for a minute and let's see how Bob's internet, if it settles in, and then go from there.
Sounds good.
All right, everybody's getting behind the scenes on YouTube. Man, everybody's excited. Woohoo, says Mike Bowles. Drew says, Lando's a giant weenie. Okay. Oh, that's great. Drew says McLaren solidified themselves as a legit contender with that race. Yeah, they did that. That's true for sure. I want to see the constructor standings. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Let's see. We got to see Oscar's first of many, says Joe of Oyster Bay. Let's see. What else?
Is that 7 different winners this year now?
Yep, that's it. 7.
And none for Checo.
Wow. Yeah.
He'd have called that at the start of the season.
Yeah. God, where did Checo finish? Let me look again. 7th. Okay.
A good drive from him today. I'm happy to talk about that in a bit.
Okay.
Actually, today he was good.
Good. Here we go.
Hello, I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back. We're talking about the Oscar Piastri win at the Hungarian Grand Prix and a 1-2 finish for McLaren, just like they started, in not the same order as that they started, but a pretty eventful race. And we got Chris Medland now. And Chris, before you joined us, Bob was lamenting the fact of all this team radio discussion and did not enjoy it. But I also wanted to counter that with the fact that I thought that the reason they wanted to give the race back to Oscar is because the team took the race away by having Oscar stay out for an additional lap. And you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the thing I will say first and foremost is McLaren qualified first and second. Their 2 drivers got through turn 1 cleanly. All right, well, let's say in first and second once Verstappen gave the place back to Norris. And then they executed the rest of the race to finish first and second with the cars in the same order. That is exactly what you need to do. Now, if Norris understood what the team wanted from him straight away at that final pit stop and said, look, you're going to come out ahead of Oscar the way we're going to run this, so you're going to have to give the place back. And he says, okay, understood. Then there's no drama, there's no controversy, and everyone goes, brilliant job by McLaren. And the team, in a sense, doesn't have to do anything differently. It's the way that Norris reacted, for me, that's created controversy and the radio messages where maybe McLaren didn't seem in control and were a little bit under pressure. So I think on that front, you've got to actually point the finger at the driver a bit. But at the end of the day, the final result is the result that you have to, it's what's going to go in the history books. And it's the one that McLaren has got right. They finished first and second, taken maximum points away from it. So I'm kind of wary. I know it's going to be a huge talking point, and I'm going to be asking questions of the team and drivers too about the way that played out. But it shouldn't overshadow that they got it right this weekend in terms of executing and getting maximum points.
Agreed.
Yeah. And the other thing is, Chris, is that I hope it doesn't take away from the celebration at McLaren. And it didn't look like it. Like I was saying in the other segment just a minute ago, is that both drivers seemed to be happy afterwards. You know, the heat of the moment of that heat of the battle, the race and all that. But both drivers seem to be happy. And look, the accomplishment of what they've done. And I'm just taking a quick look at the constructor standings, because before the race, McLaren had 295 and Red Bull had 373. And as if I hit refresh, it's now 389 for Red Bull and 338. So a nice little reduction in that gap to Red Bull. And that's what McLaren needs to be celebrating right now.
No question.
It's nearly half, hasn't it? And that's what they had to pull off. And we can get stuck into loads of reasons why that is, because obviously Max Verstappen had the collision with Lewis Hamilton, but wasn't happy with the strategy he was getting. So not everyone was delighted with their strategy team. It was the chief strategist actually that got put on the podium for McLaren as well, which is them trying to show we felt like you made the right calls. You know, they're not criticizing the driver. I can actually see from my vantage point right now, just to paint a picture for you guys, I am about 10 yards from the podium, but a level above it and the other side of a building. But I'm overlooking the pit straight and the pit lane. And the pit straight is absolutely awash with fans. They've all flooded onto the track to celebrate the podium and then wander around and get mementos. McLaren's Andrea Stella is down in the pit lane doing some TV interviews right now. And I imagine he's happy with the outcome. Now, what Norris, I think, will need to remember as well, and others will need to remember about why McLaren have played it the way they played it. If they're going to go chasing Verstappen for the Drivers' Championship, that is a tall order, but they're going to need, if Norris is the lead driver to do that, they're going to need Piastri to play ball and really help and really play second fiddle in that chase. Now, you could say, well, then why didn't they just make sure Norris won the race today? But you can't take away someone's first win when they've gone and earned it in the first 2/3 of the race, and then you've taken the lead away from them through strategy. But now, because Norris has shown he will give the place back, he will play the team game eventually. Piastri has a win under his belt, so every other opportunity isn't going to mean quite as much, but it will mean a hell of a lot still. I think that dynamic can still exist going forwards. If Norris hadn't obeyed the team order and had won that race himself, it kind of blows it all up. He's not going to get the help from Piastri. You know, that's really going to rock the team that has been building this momentum. But similarly, if the team told Piastri, look, we think Lando is our chance of the driver's title too, he's going to win this, what sort of a message does that say to the guy that had basically earned it up to that point and hasn't won a race yet? So these are good problems for McLaren to have, of course, because they have both drivers up there, and not every team has that all the time.
Yeah, no doubt. And Chris, I mentioned the team radios where they said, "This you can't do this by yourself. You need the team. You need Oscar." That was the team radio to Lando during the race. And something you said about Piastri, I mentioned that he had a fantastic start, right? I saw the stats where he got a better reaction time and he got a better 0 to 200 time than Lando, but also his pace management up to the point where he had to give up. His pace management was fantastic. He did everything that he needed to do and grew the gap. So, I mean, I think there's just no doubt. And like you say, this is a team sport, and they're going to need help all season long, you know, and what a fantastic first win for Piastri too. And Bob, I mean, I know you were lamenting it a while ago, but how do you feel about all of this after all this discussion?
You know, I see what everybody's talking about. But again, it's, well, it was just unfortunate that McLaren handled it the way they did. It's unfortunate half the story during the radio transmissions. Didn't hear it all from Piastri's side of the garage. It was noted, I see in several race reports, that Piastri looked very subdued for his first Grand Prix win, while Lando was, you know, jumping around. Lando did not spray champagne on his teammate, which may be a factor. And the other thing about that start, and Oscar made a reference to the start. He said, you know, and Lando over him.
Hey Bob, we're losing you there for a minute. We're gonna hold on just a second, Bob.
Sure.
We're losing your audio, so just a quick second. But hey, Chris.
That must be what it's like to have me on the ground usually, isn't it? Is that what I sound like when I disappear off
Exactly.
off the airwaves? So, Bob, I feel your pain, but I can see where he's headed with that a bit. I listened to Oscar Piastri's team radio for that final stint because I wanted to know what he was being told and how it was playing out, and to see when he was dealing with traffic as well, because that played a big part in this race in terms of the gaps ebbing and flowing. If you got stuck by the car in the middle sector, you lost loads of time. But it was true. He only said one word for about 10 laps when he was asked a question. Everything else was just given to him as info. But he eventually was like, is Lando planning on swapping anytime soon? And he started only in the final, I'd say 7 or 8 laps. He started to get a bit nervy, saying that the later we leave this, the more likely there's something weird that happens, like a safety car, and then I don't get to go past him. You know, we're at risk of that because obviously you can't swap positions behind the safety car. So he was just suddenly going, come on. Like, I think he understood that either he needed to close the gap or that Lando maybe wanted to calmly come back to him. You know, they didn't want to have, in a sense, the moment they had where you had one driver quite obviously slowing massively on the straight to let the other one by. But I think he was honest enough as well, Piastri, afterwards, that he wasn't that quick in the final stint. It shouldn't have mattered, really, because it sounded like, from the radio messages that they got, I think it was mid-40s is when the team said they'd call off the fight, and that was when the final pit stops happened and Piastri was leading. So I think Piastri thought, well, I should just be in the lead and I can pace myself to the finish. So, it seemed a bit messy. I still think it is nowhere near as bad if Norris just accepts what he's told first time round and does as he's told. But at the same time, you know, these are the guys that are driving Formula One cars at 200 mile an hour around a racetrack in what, again, today was actually a really hot day. I'm out in the sun right now and it's probably about low 90s, high 80s. You know, they will be worked up, high adrenaline. They don't have the whole picture in front of them. It probably does, in their mind, seem like it's a tougher decision to make.
Well, yeah, Chris, it's going to be fascinating to break all of this down. But here's the crazy thing. I want to go back to the start of the race. I mean, that 3 wide at the beginning of the race, how awesome was that to see? And I mean, you just don't get to see that very often in Formula One, but because of Piastri's, brilliant start, he was side by side with Lando Norris and then side by side with Max Verstappen. But that start was pretty amazing, Chris. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those where generally I didn't actually blame anyone for the way they played it out after that either. But I think it's right that Verstappen was told to give his place back. But fair play to all 3 of them, because Piastri, obviously, once he's picked his braking spot, he's at the mercy of the other 2 not turning in. Norris is in a really tough position. You know, he's got his teammate on the inside and he can't squeeze him too hard. And he was trying to defend the lead at the same time. But he's got Verstappen he needs to defend from on the outside, and he needs to make sure there's no contact there and that he doesn't do anything illegal. And Verstappen's thinking, I can fly around the outside here. These 2 have got to be careful with each other. And I think that's why he did try and make it stick on the outside. Watching the onboards, you saw that they all reacted really well to each other, just leaving enough space. And then Verstappen did have to respond to Norris reacting to Piastri, if that makes sense, and run wide. But once you do that, then you gain an advantage off the track, and he did have to give the place up. And I think it was actually handled very well across all 3. Early, I wonder what Verstappen will say when he looks back at it, when he was complaining that, that's how we're going to race now. You can just force each other off the track. It doesn't matter. We've seen Verstappen be very, very aggressive on multiple occasions. So I don't really think that's a leg to stand on for him either. But I think when he looks back, he'll realize, okay, none of that was intentional. That was just everyone making sure we didn't collide. Unlike one of the other times he went through turn 1 with Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. Yeah. We got to talk about Verstappen's demeanor, his whole attitude during this race. He was angry. I was going to say panicked, but panicked was not the word. He just seemed angry the entire race, and he didn't really seem in control of his emotions. And Chris, I got to ask you about, there's some amazing photos, including one we tweeted out of the back end of Max Verstappen's car, flying through the air. What do you think about that when they came together, when Hamilton and Verstappen came together? Describe that in the way you remember it, and then your opinion on what happened.
Yeah, the way I remember it is that Hamilton was actually lapping a Williams. I don't know if it was Logan Sargent. It might well have been on the run to turn 1. So he had to get off the racing line a bit. Verstappen was quite a long way back, but had been trying to find ways to get past Hamilton at that stage, and was clearly pretty fired up, as you say, based on his demeanor, the interactions he'd had with his team. He was not happy today. So he was looking to be pretty aggressive anyway. He saw that as a chance because Hamilton had to go offline, passing Sargent. So he sent it down the inside, but he looked up. He clearly didn't have full control of his car. Hamilton definitely waited to turn in, but the angle he was on, I think he tried to pinch Verstappen a bit, and then it meant that as Verstappen locked up and couldn't turn, then left rear met right front, and Hamilton's right front launched Verstappen in the air, as you say. I think if stewards are going to do anything, I think they're likely to penalise Verstappen there for not being in full control and causing the collision. I think with the outcome, which they always say they don't look at, but they're going to, and the fact that there probably was an aspect of maybe Hamilton's line under braking that was going to make that a wedge that was closing slightly, then it might be a no further action. But they're going to the stewards in 25 minutes or so to discuss that. And not the first or last time I think that Hamilton and Verstappen might collide in Formula One. But that was, I think, partly a sign of Verstappen being pretty fired up and trying to be aggressive because he really did not feel like the team got strategy right today. Now, if he makes that pass clean, they just about have. They'd probably finish third in a race that he was running third and likely to be third in for most of. But he was told, or he was given a strategy that put him in a position where he had to do overtaking on the track. It's not easy here. So I understand some of his frustration. I am surprised how quickly he gets frustrated based on the success he's had with that team and the job they normally do. That's one thing. But we've seen all drivers be like that. But the flip side is his race engineer, Giampiero Lambiase, GP, he can be sassy anyway. I was amazed at how strong he went back at Verstappen. Now, it felt like to the extent today that it probably was only serving to fire Verstappen up even more. Whether that was intentional, I don't know, but I don't think it actually, for once, was the right approach. Because when he said that Verstappen was being childish and he wasn't going to get into these team radio messages, complaining about other drivers, you can just say, okay, noted, Max, or like copy, get your head down. You don't have to criticize your own driver at that point, I don't think, for that. So that did surprise me, and it'll be interesting to see what Christian Horner thinks of that, who I will hopefully go and find in a little bit when I clamber down from the roof here, because he's normally good at talking to us, but it's not been their best day.
I did think the same thing, Chris. I thought GP and Max have this relationship where everyone says it's okay the way they talk to each other. It's okay. That's the way they always do it. But it felt like you just said, it felt like they took it to another level. And we got Bob back connected. Bob, Varsha, what do you think about the way they talk to each other and also about the collision? Do you agree with Chris?
Yeah, I do agree with Chris. To answer your second question first, I was aware, as you all were, that GP and Max, can be hard. I hate to say this, but it kind of reminds me of my own marriage when my wife and I will bicker a little bit, and then the kids are saying, "Are you guys all right? What's going on? Why are you mad with each other?" We're not. This is how we communicate after 41 years of being married, I guess. But and I could see where that's a similar kind of relationship that drivers and their race engineers can have. Who else was it that got on his engineer about being told too late? I think it was George Russell who said we sound indecisive because you were
Alex Albon, at Williams.
Oh, it's Alex Albon. That's right. Yeah, with the Williams team. So there was that bit of spice in there too. I don't know. I guess if we just listen to radio transmission through the whole race, we might think it's no big deal. But today did seem a little spicier across the board between drivers and engineers. Yeah,
it's funny. You have that. You said Albon. I have that. I screenshot it. Says they said to Albon, team radio says we're now thinking we're going to have to go to Plan B, and Albon responds, "Yeah, but I don't appreciate when you do that. And now the tires are dead. We're just too indecisive." Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we heard more team radio today than we've heard most of the season combined. And I just thought it was a fantastic insight to the sport today too. But, but yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Well, it happens in every sport, I suppose. I mean, recall that picture that went everywhere after the Super Bowl when Travis Kelce was right up in his head coach Andy Reid's face about the way the game was being conducted. So, I mean, this stuff happens. David Coulthard on the commentary said something to the effect that relationship is deteriorating. And I thought, boy, I hope not. And I suspect not, simply because, you need to be able to speak frankly and clearly and briefly on the radio. I mean, because decisions are made that quickly.
Yeah, we all applaud any driver. Like there was discussion today on the commentary about Oscar Piastri, how he can be just so calm and level. And I mean, everybody at their job is better when they're calm and level. It's good to be up and excited, but you got to be calm and level. And I do worry about that relationship between GP and Max. It just, I don't know. I mean, I know exactly what you mean about a marriage relationship because I've been married for over 30 years myself. And so I get it. And sometimes you say things, but also sometimes you say things and go, gosh, I wish I hadn't said that. But but the point is that it's just fascinating to see it all play out, right there. Neither one of them hold back.
Yeah, well, we probably shouldn't dwell on this topic too long because Chris, of course, has not been married all that long, and I don't want him to think that he has all this to look forward to.
Oh, I know what's coming. I have the added dynamic of fighting my wife often for interviews, so that's always fun. Which I don't have to do today, fortunately, because she is off this weekend. But it is true, and this is high pressure, isn't it? None of us, sadly, yet anyway, have sat in a Formula One car and started a Formula One race and worked out how to have that interaction at those speeds with that pressure and the way you need to discuss things. And I think it's quite interesting, like you both said, in terms of Oscar Piastri's demeanor. But I think even post-race, it's because he's that calm and level-headed pretty much at all times. And literally at all times. You talk to him at any point in the day, he's like that. He gets very focused before a race, but even so, he still interacts with you in the same way. So I do actually wonder if the lack of huge celebrations wasn't down to the way the race played out, although I'm sure he had some nerves and was slightly worried, but more just because he'd have had that inner confidence he was going to get it done, but he's just always so steady and calm just as a character.
All right, guys, well, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Sergio Perez because I think he had a bit of a better race. You're listening to Speed City, back after these messages. All right. So, Chris, we got Bob on the phone. Do you want to try to go see if you can get some interviews? I really hate to miss that opportunity, especially McLaren.
I've actually already gone down. I gambled. Yeah, I gambled when Bob was on the phone because it was nice and clear. So,
hold on, Bob.
Sorry, I just realized how clearly how smooth is it for Bob to hear me when he's on the phone? So going to be a delay.
Bob. Yeah, Bob, can Bob hear? Okay. Hey, Bob, can you hear Chris?
If I'm talking right now, Bob, can you hear me? Sounds like no.
He may have stepped away.
Okay. Okay. All right. But so you can't hear me. There we go. So Bob can't hear me. All right. Okay, no worries. It was just to say that I came out when Bob joined the phone call to test it, and the signal seems good. So I'm down roaming now already, and I'm going to try and get Stella. Going to try and get Horner as my main two. I've just seen Vasseur, but he A, doesn't look like he wants to chat too much, and B, has escaped inside. So I'm not going to waste too much time chasing him at this moment.
All right, I'm checking YouTube. Drew says, can we get Medland to talk to Komatsu? I think we had Gene Haas and Komatsu this season so far, recently, actually.
Yeah, if I could bump into him. I mean, it wasn't their greatest day, was it? No points today, but if I could grab him, I'll see if I get down there.
Let's see. The Wood Source says the story on Sky broadcast that Max was pulling double duty doing sim racing overnight. I forgot about that. Yeah, I did see that. I know.
Yeah. Spa virtual 24 hours, I think. But then he did that in Imola and won that race and wasn't cranky then.
All right, here we go.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
Where will you be Labor Day weekend? The World Endurance Championship is coming back to Circuit of the Americas for the Lone Star Le Mans. Labor Day weekend starting Friday, August 30th and finishing on September 1st with the Lone Star Le Mans race on Sunday. It's going to be a fantastic weekend here in Austin, Texas. That's the double duty. You get to come to Austin, Texas, including not just the Circuit of the Americas. And it's going to be fantastic racing, as it always is in the World Endurance Championship. And this year, it is really amazing because you've got so many OEMs now. You've got Alpine, Aston Martin, BMW, Cadillac, Corvette, Ferrari, Ford, Lamborghini, Lexus, McLaren, Peugeot, Porsche, and of course, Toyota, who used to be there by themselves, but not anymore because it's full. The paddock is full of all these different manufacturers. You got Formula One world champion Jenson Button and a guy who won 7-time championship, Valentino Rossi, the world champion 7-time winner. And they're just some of the drivers. Of course, as you know, the World Endurance Championship has tons of amazing drivers, Formula One drivers, sports car drivers from every series. It's just an amazing get-together. You got 2 support races, the Lamborghini Super Trofeo and the Ford Mustang Challenge. 2 Ford Mustang GT3 cars, really a blast to watch. A fan zone, displays, car displays, entertainment. It doesn't get any better. All the action at Circuit of the Americas Labor Day weekend, Friday, August 30th through September 1st with the Lone Star Le Mans. All right, I'm going to give out the phone number, 512-643-5483, if you want to call and tell us what you thought of today's race. And Chris Medland, I hear your microphone. You've climbed down off of the roof trying to get some interviews for us. Give us your eyes and ears.
Well, my eyes are filled with the sight of someone you asked me to get on the show earlier. Mr. Gunther Steiner is right in front of me right now. And I've grabbed him inside Pirelli, actually, because Gunther, going to put you on the spot as a former team boss. How did you feel listening to McLaren trying to get Lando Norris to move over for Oscar Piastri?
I think in the end they did a good job to convince him without, the English style it was, could you please move over, and gentlemen. And for a while, I think, he didn't answer because he was thinking about it, what best to do, which was also very smart, not get emotional about it. And then in the end, as much as at that moment in time, I think he didn't want to move over, he did it because he realized maybe he needs the help later on. I would say if McLaren is missing 1 point at the end of the year to win the Drivers' Championship, they will not be happy.
They won't, but that's a long way off right now, isn't it? And I guess they need that harmony between the 2 drivers still at this stage.
Yeah, they need the harmony, but I think like to convince Lando, they could have spoken with Oscar as well, saying, Oscar, I think for you winning the championship is very difficult. Maybe it's not this year, but you need us next year as well. They are both there for the long term. So obviously, I'm not included in what the agreements are between the two. So I just give you my opinion. But for me, it's like, because I think Lando can now win the World Championship because they're very strong. The car is very good. The team did a very good job, So it would be a pity for Lando if he loses the championship because he's missing a few points.
You could also say some cracks appeared today at Red Bull with Max Verstappen. He seemed a bit hot under the collar, and there was some pretty spicy radio messages coming back at him from his race engineer as well.
Yeah, but because it's like Max, you were used to it, and Max is a racer. He will never give up or anything, So he's just getting what Lando did very correct. Max lost his temper, a little bit. And but Max is used so much to win, and for him, this is now like, I'm not going to win anymore. I think it's a bit of panic setting in because the McLarens are very fast. The Mercedes was good, so it's just like a little bit. It's getting to him because it was not as easy as maybe was 2-3 months ago. And we all know when you are put under pressure, you make more mistakes than when you are free to do what you want to do.
We were talking just now about how this was a race where we heard a lot of team radio. We heard a lot of what's going on with teams trying to manage their drivers and their races. Is this a day that you really miss it, where you're like, the adrenaline would be pumping and you'd have tough calls to make?
Yeah, if I would be in a position to win a race, for sure I would. When you're just fighting for P15 or P16, I don't miss that one anymore. I mean, I've done that, but no, I mean, I miss a little bit, but I'm not, I'm not bitter. I quite enjoy it, and it's nice that you see that, like what McLaren did is a very good job. I mean, if you just look back 18 months where they were nowhere, and what they made out of it, it's a astonishing, So hats off to them what they achieved, because everybody said beginning of this year, it will be again a Max Verstappen Red Bull show. It isn't, So we still see Formula One can be very interesting.
Now, I know you're a man with many hats at the moment. You've got lots of different partnerships, lots of ambassadorial roles, but you do a lot of punditry here. So I'm going to finish off with your pundit's hat on. Predictions. Who wins the Drivers' Championship and who wins the Constructors' Championship?
Ooh, you got me here. Constructors, it's so difficult because they're so close together if you think how many points are. Constructors, I would say McLaren gets it because they've got two very good drivers, in my opinion. I think drivers, I would say Max, because he's a good racer, and in the end he will take get the best out of it.
That wasn't quite the last question. I'm going to go with one harder one. Do you keep Sergio Perez beyond the summer break?
I think today he didn't do a bad job. I must say, you always must say what is the latest one. I wouldn't, but if he would have qualified better yesterday and not put it in the wall, he could have beat 3, 4, 5, and that would make points. So I think he's got another chance in Spa, but I think if he messes up in Spa, I would say it's time to move, or to swap or to do something, because I think it's also because he needs to get out of this situation, and it's difficult for him. Today, he made a good step because today he drove very good, in my opinion. He did the best he could do, and at least didn't make a mistake. So, it's a tough decision to make. But yesterday I was thinking, man, it's Q1, with the Red Bull, he shouldn't be doing that,
Yeah, he's man under pressure, but I appreciate your insights. Thank you very much. We'll see you at the race soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris.
Good job, Chris. Thank you, sir. And we opened up the phones a moment ago, and Ryan Sheehan is what popped up on the caller ID. And if this is the same Ryan Sheehan who's leading the championship in the Formula 3, the FR Americas here in the United States, Ryan, is that you, buddy?
Sure is.
Oh, congrats on leading the championship.
Thank you.
Hey, look, thanks for calling in, but what do you think about this this win by Oscar Piastri, his first one?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously great to win your first race. I think he might be a little upset with his team, making it a bit stressful, and I think it might always be in the back of his head that something might have, he might not have won it, or that he could kind of gifted it. But I think maybe in his mind he might have a different viewpoint and might be thinking that he was already, the quickest car and kind of got screwed over. But I think you might have to win another to really let it settle in.
Wow. Well, yeah, and we talked a lot about this. There's a lot of complexity to it, but look, you understand that you had your first win in FR, a big time series last year, I guess. But you're leading the championship, man. That is awesome. How many races have you won this year?
I think we're at 4, I believe.
Wow. Well, hey, I know that you are in that classic struggle where a lot of young drivers are struggling to make their way up, and you guys are struggling to even make it to the next race. I know we've talked recently about all this, but how is that? How's everything going to get there? You guys, I know you got to do fundraising and everything else.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a grind to get to the next race, but we keep working, we keep persevering, and we always make it work.
Well, that's
Ryan,
fantastic, Ryan. Well, I appreciate you.
Question in there.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Bob. Sorry,
Ryan. Put yourself in the position of both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. What would you have done confronted with that same order?
I think if you're Lando, I mean, obviously you're an employee of the organization. You kind of have to, to follow what they say. It's give up the position. I think you're also making yourself look a bit better by, being the good guy and letting it go. I think Lando could have very easily maybe talked his engineer out of it, said it'll lose too much time or something like that. But I think it does show good character from Lando that he is willing to give it up And I think that it also stops any kind of Hamilton-Rosberg situation developing at McLaren.
And if you're Oscar, is this victory tainted in any way in your view?
Yeah, I think it could be a bit. I don't know. He is a very, calm and collected person, so he might not care. The only thing that matters to him could be the 25 points he just got. But I think obviously he'll want to win another race, but I think he'll want to really go and win, properly without any dramas.
Good answer. You're ready for the big time, my man.
Thank you.
Hey, Ryan, good luck on the next race, and I hope you get the championship. And if you guys want to support Ryan, you can go to ryansheehan.com, right? Isn't that the best place to find you, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, we're going to take one more call. Chris, we got time for another call?
Go for it.
All right, we're going to go to Stephen in Vancouver on line 4. Stephen, how are you?
I'm great. Hey, guys. Good to talk to you. Pretty tough.
Hey, what'd you think about today?
I listen to you guys on the radio, and it's fantastic. To me, the biggest question here to me is, are you not trying to win the World Drivers' Championship? And is Lando not in the best position to do that? So he's not letting him win that race. The thing to do.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, you want to take that one?
You've got to look at it as a long term, though, isn't it? There's still a long, long way to go in this championship, and you can't just completely.
You need every one.
Right. You do, but you also need. But every point will come with the help of the other car too at times, and if you haven't outlined that,
you gave up 8.
Well, but then over the whole season, you might give up more because Oscar won't do as he's asked because you sprung this on him, if that makes sense. So you need to pick your timing. And if this wasn't pre-agreed, you could say that was a weakness in McLaren's. Did you not pre-agree by now what you were doing on that front? And if you did pre-agree it and you decided we're not backing Lando yet for that title, then yeah, I think that's a fair question to say, well, you're not being ambitious enough. But you can't mid-race suddenly say to Oscar, oh, actually, you know what? We think we might be able to win a championship. You're not allowed to win at all. You're never going to win a Grand Prix with us this year, which is what this would have said. So that smashes his confidence. That breaks up the team dynamic. That could be far more costly over the course of the season than the way they played it today. But you are right that you do need every single point, and this could prove very costly if it gets tight at the end of the year. But flip side, it might only get tight because they work so well together from here on out, and that you can have that conversation now to say to Oscar, look, you've got to win. We backed you here, and we'll back you when all things are equal. But if we're going to catch Max right now, we
lost you, Chris. Hey, Stephen, by the way, thanks for listening on the radio. We appreciate it. And what do you think about what Chris said?
Yeah, I don't know. I think every point does matter, and you get them when you get them. You don't get them later. It's F1 racing. It's not, and you could hear it in Oscar's voice. He wasn't that thrilled about winning that race because of the way he won it. And I think he speaks for a lot of fans to say, you want to win a race, win the race. I mean, Lando won the pole, and he managed his tires in a way that would have won him the race. So I don't know.
And I think Bob Varsha agrees with you, and he said that earlier in the show. Well, guys, hey, Stephen, thanks for calling. Thanks for tuning in. We got to take a quick break, and we'll be back after these messages. All right, what's happening on YouTube? Drew, Chris, you're gonna. Is Chris still connected? Yeah, he's connected. Drew doesn't like Gunther, and you ask him to get Io Komatsu, and you got Gunther.
Yeah. Oh, whoops.
He's laughing about it, but anyway, I knew Drew would. I knew that would get his goat. Let's see.
Did you say I dropped out at the end of that last comment?
You did for just a second. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be the signals just died away, I assume, when everyone's come back into the paddock, but I'm trying to stay in one place as much as I can.
Yeah, I mean, you sound great right now, and it was just the very last little bit. And I'm glad you answered that, because honestly, I didn't understand what Steven said. That's why I threw it to you.
No, I got it.
Great.
Okay. Oh, good. So, Bob, you can hear everything. Casey's he rewired the circuits.
Yep. Learn something new every day. I can hear everybody right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I love what Andy P said earlier. He said Oscar Piastri could be an astronaut or an ER doc. He never gets riled up. That's pretty spot on.
Fighter pilot.
Yeah, man. I asked Ryan Sheehan to call in, obviously. It's such an amazing story watching those guys go from, a guy that a kid that watched his first race, actually it was a world endurance race in Austin, to where he is now leading the championship. But they're in the classic spot. They're running out of money and they need some sponsorship. And they're literally dialing for dollars every day. And I think they're going to be able to make it to the next race. Wouldn't that just be a nightmare if they had to stop because they ran out of money after, leading the championship? So
been there, done that.
Yep. All right. Coming back.
Hi, this is Mario Andretti, and this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
Thank you, Mario Andretti. And we haven't heard a lot from the Andretti Formula One effort, but I'm sure that things are still going on in earnest, and maybe Chris can catch us up to speed. Before we do that real quick, I'm just going to run down the whole winning grid here because I don't think we've done that yet because, of course, Oscar Piastri won, followed by Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen fell to 5th after that collision, Carlos Sainz in 6th, Sergio Perez, which we'll talk about even more now, George Russell, Yuki Tsunoda, Lance Stroll rounds out the top 10, followed by his teammate, Alonso, then Ricardo, Hulkenberg, Albon, Magnussen, Bottas, Logan Sargent down in 17, Esteban Ocon 18, Zhou Guanyu and Pierre Gasly, who had to retire the car. But Chris, I don't think you got to talk about Checo as what you thought of his race today. I guess you did a little bit there with Gunther, but what do you think?
Yeah, I thought that was a good performance actually from Checo today. I hope you can still hear me as people move around. But there was the reason he needed to put that performance in was because of his mistake yesterday. So I'm not going to sort of say that makes it brilliant. I'm not going to forget that moment. But he did everything today that he needed to do and did it very well. He climbed up from 16th to 7th, didn't make any mistakes, made overtakes when he needed to. The team got the strategy right with his car, and he executed it perfectly. And he got the maximum result he was ever going to get. He ended up, I think, 16 seconds behind Carlos Sainz, who was, a second and a half behind Max Verstappen after that late incident. So It was a really strong drive. Now, 7th is still not good enough for Red Bull because they should be qualifying much higher and fighting for the podium. But I think given A, how competitive it is, B, that it's tough to overtake here, and C, the fact that he was under such pressure, I think that was actually, as Gunther said as well, a real step in the right direction. And that's probably set him up, if he can follow that up with a solid result at Spa, it might mean he does hold on over the summer break. Because flip side is, no one else did anything that stood out today. Yuki Tsunoda, another good drive, got in the points, didn't quite come together for Daniel Ricciardo, and he got beaten again. And I just don't see that anyone that Red Bull would put in making the case that they're unignorable. Whereas obviously with Checo, if he could just do enough, then he'll hold on now, I think.
Yep. Hey, I want to talk about something that Dave Lawrence just brought up on YouTube, and that is, I wrote this down and I even saved the graphic, 200 podiums for Lewis Hamilton. I mean, that is an enormous milestone, isn't it, Bob?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would guess that's round about 2/3 of his Formula One career, maybe a few races less. But I mean, to be on the podium, top 3, that many times is pretty staggering to think about.
Yeah, and I've got the numbers for you here. And Lewis Hamilton with 200. The next is Michael Schumacher with 155, so not even close. Then Vettel with 122, Verstappen with 107, which stays the same. These numbers are from Saturday. Alan Prost, 106. Alonso with 106, tied with him. And then Raikkonen with 103. So that is a staggering number. And thank you, David, for thinking of that, because that's just a phenomenal number. And go ahead, Bob.
How many starts has Lewis got now? He's up over
Chris?
300, I think.
It is over 300. Yeah, he had his win in Silverstone was a winner race after starting their 300th Grand Prix. But
That's right.
top of my head, I want to
Good
say
point.
it's about 330, 340 kind of region. So you're right, just under 2/3, I'd say, in terms of podiums.
Yeah, and
Awesome
Lewis Hamilton,
stuff.
the number of records he's got, right? He's got that is a record, by the way, of course, obviously, and the number of wins is the record at 104. Pole positions 104. Consecutive race starts at 265. Wins at a single circuit, which he just did the other day at 9. Poles at a single circuit 9. Podiums at a single circuit 15, and consecutive points finishes with 48. He's just rewritten the record book as they say, but
I was close. 344 starts.
Yeah. Yep. What else from today, guys? Who are we missing? Yuki Tsunoda finished ahead of his teammate Daniel Ricciardo today. We got to watch that, of course, every single week. Lance Stroll finished ahead of his teammate, which I mentioned just a minute ago. Leclerc finishing ahead of Sainz, which, do you know where they are head-to-head on finishes, Chris? Of Sainz and Leclerc?
They were pretty darn close, actually, heading into this weekend, I think. I want to say it was something like 7-5 in the Clerk's favour, so that might have just stretched that out a little bit. Another one that was quite tight, though, certainly in qualifying, and now it'll be close in the race, is the two Aston Martins. Lance Stroll beating Fernando Alonso again.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Logan Sargent, I really didn't get to see any of his race. Bob, any comments on Logan Sargent's race today? I don't think I saw much of it at all.
No, we didn't see Logan at all, to the best of my knowledge. And this was one of those races where I think, other than the last 3 guys on the grid and the top 3 guys on the grid, just about everybody else on the grid, it probably ran in 6 or 8 different positions during the course of the race. There was that much position changing going on, which was kind of fun to see. No, I don't know what his race was like. We didn't hear any radio transmissions. We know he finished 17th and a lap down, which is easy to do at the Hungaroring. So, good qualifying, a better race finish would be good too. But I don't know. I think the writing is on the wall for Logan.
Yeah, I think we've been saying that for a while now. And speaking of that, let's jump back to Checo. Sorry, my ADHD is doing this to the show, but going back to Checo Perez, Chris, on Wednesday on Wheel to Wheel, you and I talked about what it would take for Checo to keep that seat. And I think we talked about top 5s at a minimum, right? And, I was thinking, a 7th place is kind of like the very fringe of what you'd have to do. But I think you're going to have to do something spectacular in this next race to keep that seat. A podium or something.
Potentially, but like I say, there's no one that's doing anything that tells you they're definitely going to do a better job. I still think you maybe gamble and see what Daniel Ricciardo does, because you're probably going to drop Ricciardo at the end of the year otherwise from RB. So find out if he can do better in the Red Bull. But also, it was more that today, recovering from yesterday, that was as good as it was ever going to get. So he delivered the best he could today. Now, coming into the weekend, you would not have accepted 7th. Wake up this morning, you say, if he performs well, he'll finish 7th. So he's done that bit, and you wonder if that gives him that bit of confidence to then have a better result next time out. So I think that's where I'm saying it was just that small step, but he's got to follow it up. And so far, we've not seen that at all since Miami? I think Miami's when the run really started. So, big weekend ahead for him at Spa, of all places as well. One of the true driver circuit still.
Yep. Hey, I'm going to look at the driver standings now. I've hit the refresh button. Max Verstappen still leads, of course, 265, but now the gap is down to, it's 189 for Lando. So that gap has shrunk, of course.
76 points, though. Still 3 complete race wins.
3 complete. Right. Yep. Of course, followed by Charles Leclerc, who got some nice points today. And then Carlos Sainz, and then Oscar Piastri up to 149. That's a nice big leap. He's now 24 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton who's behind him in 6th, and then Perez right behind Lewis Hamilton at 124, and then George Russell, and then Fernando Alonso, and then Lance Stroll in 10th in the driver's standings right now. And we just got about 3 minutes or so left in the show. Chris, I know you were still lingering, trying to get Andrea Stella from McLaren. Any shot at that?
It's looking unlikely, sadly. Funny enough, he's a very popular man after that win, and he's just been holding court with all the print media. Actually, within a quite interesting setup, because McLaren don't have their motorhome anymore, they've had to do it inside some engineering trucks. So he stood on a row of steps in this kind of covered area between 2 engineering trucks for everyone to try and speak to him. So that's where he's just held court, and he's actually trying to escape very quickly out the back right now. So I'll see if I can cut him off at the pass, but I think we're nearly out of time on the show. In fact, no, too late. He's long gone. But simply, Christian Horner went straight into debrief, and I think this is showing that these guys all have issues really that they want to get on top of. They have kind of teams that they want to be speaking to and understanding why they did what they did. So yeah, Horner hasn't emerged from the debrief yet. I tried to line him up too, but no go. So it's been a stressful one. I can paint a picture though. Toto Wolff scooting down the paddock on an electric scooter, already changed out of his kit. Pair of chinos and a denim shirt, trying to be nondescript in one way because he's not wearing team kit, but he's a tall man and he's on an electric scooter. He's about 7.5 feet as he goes down there, so he's head and shoulders above everyone. But he's trying to get himself out of here because it's hot foot it back to factories for 2 days and then get to Spa.
Yeah, and you need to tell him, Chris, that I think per contract that talking to the media is part of their deal, so they can't just scoot off and hide.
It's actually true.
Like
you are right. Go, Bob.
I was thinking everybody suddenly realized we're in the second half of the season, and although it sounds silly to say, it's time to knuckle down. You can kind of feel the intensity rising as everybody looks ahead to the last 10 or so races in this season.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Hey, you know what? Last weekend, the last race, excuse me, we had this huge television audience here in the United States for the British Grand Prix. I cannot wait to see what happens after this because, it's so funny. I watch these ratings, and when it's funny, people tune out if it's boring towards the end, but I think this time we may have some additional fantastic ratings because what a fantastic race it was today. And we are just about out of time. Of course, don't forget that Chris and I do the Wheel to Wheel show every Wednesday on SiriusXM and on the same channel, Channel 81, and you can tune into that. And we also Sunday night with Speed City, no matter what, if it's not a Grand Prix weekend, we do that. So we have all of that. And we got about just a few seconds, Chris. Anything special for Wheel to Wheel this week?
Well, hopefully something I grab after we go off air because I'll remind all the team bosses of their contractual obligations if I can. Because, everyone's been hiding today, haven't they? But it's because they don't want to face the music.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And we will talk to you on Wednesday and Sunday.